Hey, YouTube friends, I have Justin Wu of Growthly, GROTH.LY. That is his agency on for the podcast today. So bear with me while I get the podcast started and we'll get going. Okay, 3, 2, let me make sure I'm recording here. 3, 2, 1. Hey folks, I'm your host, Todd Bergen, and you are listening to the Divorce the Workforce podcast. I interview entrepreneurs and online thought leaders about what they do, why they do what they do, and how they go about doing it. Learn about how they got started and why, and hear about their successes as well as their failures. And learn from them as you chart your own course to freedom. Welcome to the program, my friends. And today I have a special guest who is a well-traveled man, at least recently. I know that he's been traveling a lot. Justin Wu of Growthly, GROTH.LY. Justin, how are you doing?
Doing good, doing good. Thanks for having me.
Listen, it's my pleasure. Tell me, what is Growthly?
Yeah, so Growthly is a growth hacking agency, and what we do is, we're coming in as an outsourced growth team to businesses and brands that either don't have their whole marketing funnel, the roadmap, and infrastructure in place, or if they have an existing CMO or a marketing lead, then we're coming in fulfilling kind of the bandwidth, just because, the whole marketing space, there's a lot of different channels, and there's places that need to get covered off, and we're just coming in as kind of that thought leader or extra help with brands and businesses that are looking to accelerate their growth, either raise that next round of funding, get more traction, and really just building up their whole email list or their social brands.
Now, how did you get into this? Because that's a lot.
Yeah. So it is a lot, but it's a culmination of experience for me. I started my entrepreneurship career at the age of probably 13, 27 now. And it's just been, as an entrepreneur or like a founder of different businesses of various levels of success and failures, I learned one thing. I learned that it doesn't matter how good of a product you have if you don't have traction. Traction and marketing and growth is key for any business, right? And so as I continued building my businesses, I started to learn how to, get distribution and build up my own follower base throughout the different businesses. And once I started figuring out how to do that, then I started figuring out how to build the businesses after the distribution, after I figured that out. And so because of that, I started out initially like consulting with a lot of different businesses. And I just said, when I was especially young, I said yes to everything. As I got older now, I have to say no to certain projects and whatnot. But I was literally jumping in from like retail to e-commerce to services-based industry to even cannabis tech to gold, silver. So I've been jumping through a lot of different businesses and helping business owners really grow. And because of that, I've been able to look at a lot of different business models and also growth channels. And then that's where I decided, well, now it's time to put everything together, all the years of experience that I have, and let's go and build kind of a service or agency that can help these other businesses get their whole marketing funnel put together, especially now where a lot of the, I wouldn't say startups, but the traditional industries and businesses like real estate, healthcare, and all the old school businesses are now finally understanding that digital and marketing is more important. That's just, a huge amount, a huge opportunity of businesses to kind of help in with their whole marketing.
Well, yeah, and I would imagine that, it's a golden opportunity for you to capitalize on your past experience, and I would imagine that, I'm sure you have stiff competition out there, but I'm sure that. It's because it's such a new thing that all these old school businesses are getting into it. There's plenty of business to go around, and like you said, you have to turn some away.
Yeah, so there's a few ways to look about it. First, there's a lot of marketers out there, but marketing itself is kind of a nebulous term now these days. Everybody's calling themselves a marketer if they have a huge Snapchat following, they're going to call themselves a Snapchat marketer. If somebody is good at SEO, they're an SEO marketer. But everybody is throwing out the term marketing now, just because they built a business and then they got some customers. The people can put on that marketing hat. And so in terms of like competition of other agencies and other people that I kind of go out and sell against, what I notice is that a lot of these marketers that exist, they focus on a single channel or a single kind of like performance or specific channel. And what I mean by that is that they're going to go, a lot of these marketers or agencies out there, it's good for them to go out and say, hey, I'm a social media marketing agency, or I'm like a PPC or Facebook ad management, or I'm like an SEO only agency. But those guys are the specialists and they're great at it. But what businesses really need is not necessarily that single channel, unless they're like a big company or they understand that channel is what they exactly need. What most of these companies, like everybody else, needs is that high-level strategy and kind of that architecture to kind of build out their full roadmap and plan. And that's what most people need, is just like the fundamentals, the funnels, and that strong marketing foundation before they run any like specific channels or distribution platforms. And so because of that, initially when I first started out pitching to customers and clients, I was saying, oh, hey, I can help you grow your social channel. Social, because Snapchat or like Facebook, Instagram is growing huge. But the reality is that business may or may not need that channel that I was constantly selling them on the channel, just because I was doing that as a marketing agency. And I'm seeing that done a lot by other agencies, where they're just trying to like force feed that channel because they're good at it to that customer. And whether it be hype or like people are like selling just live stream, like, oh, your business needs to get live stream, your business needs to get on Instagram stories. That's not the case for every single business, but these agencies and marketers are constantly doing that. And so, I think a lot of businesses initially, when they got their initial marketing ad spend budget, they got burned because they got sold on a growing channel, but that channel may not work for their business, and they just still don't have their basics and foundation in place. And so for me to go out and sell them kind of the high level architecture for the price of essentially a little bit higher than an intern and a marketing hire, but I can provide them that more like CMO level type of work, has been an easy sell for all the customers that I've been working with.
So you're offering a more well-rounded approach rather than okay.
Yeah, and it's just like a more complete package, because growth is not just a single channel. I mean, it could be, but it's the culmination of like the whole thing. And I think a lot of these marketing agencies and marketers out there are kind of missing that point, or they themselves aren't well-rounded. And if they're not well-rounded, well, it's like you can be the best Facebook ad buyer, but if the business itself doesn't have an inbound funnel, landing page, email drip, and other stuff in their whole marketing stack, then the success or failures of that whole marketing campaign will be dependent on that too. And so that's where like I identify that, because I initially, like, again, I started heavily on the social side. Then I was like noticing my customers leaving and churning, and like, what's going on? I'm driving the traffic, I'm driving the engagements and the growth on the social side. But then I started realizing my customers had other gaps further down the funnel that they just had no clue. And most people, what I understand is just marketing is not an easy subject, and most people still don't get it.
So, kind of outline one of your best success stories, and you don't have to identify the client necessarily, but kind of, like an industry. Where did you go in and you really like knocked a home run, knocked it out of the ballpark, and turned this place around?
Yeah. So for me, my first kind of home run that I went after was the automotive, the car dealership and the real estate industry, both of those. And this was probably about like seven years ago, and it was kind of by pure accident, in the sense that I had a friend that initially decided to be part owner of a kind of independent car dealership, and he's like, "Oh, hell, Justin, you know how to do websites and marketing, right?" And I'm like, "Yeah, yeah. What's going on?" And he's like, "Well, I need help to grow our business." And once I jumped in there, I realized, wow, this whole industry itself, very old school. They're just buying ads, traditional media, using a lot of Craigslist, newspaper, radio, TV, and they just never really understood online marketing and digital. And I just then all my other friends was going after like the tech startups and everything else. I started noticing the difference. Like, oh, this whole industry itself is behind, and that was just all opportunity for me to go in and seize that opportunity to help a industry that hasn't caught up to the times yet, because nobody else is looking in that space, or they're not trying to figure that out. And so like my first initial success was helping independent car dealership with their marketing and online growth. Then I scaled that up to other independent car dealerships. And then I took all that case studies, then went after the larger franchise dealerships like the Acura of Seattle, and Toyota and Lexus and all that stuff, all those kind of franchise dealerships within that whole state of Washington, and really kind of helped scaled my growth and success.
Do you still work with any of the automotive companies that you worked with in the past? Do they still have you doing their stuff?
No. So what happened at that time, and this was me, and this is what happened. Essentially, the whole market crashed with both. I happened to pick both real estate, and I did the same thing with the real estate market, where I saw opportunity helping them doing a lot of seller and home buyer lead gen. But both those markets tanked, and so did the ad spend during those years. And because of that, first off, I'm not going to talk. The car dealership and the automotive industry, even though you help them as a vendor, it's still they're not the most easiest people to work with. Okay. And in terms of because especially that's the only thing. Sometimes when you go and help like an industry that still doesn't get it, you're still trying to break that barrier of them trying to understand and respect that whole the new channel and new industry. And for me, like when the whole market crashed for both the real estate and the automotive market, that took all the ad spend away, pushed it a lot heavily to more of the used car market. But then even then, what ended up happening was just wasn't worth all the headaches that I had dealing with those type of clients.
I would imagine with the old school businesses as well, one of the things that might be a problem, and I'm just kind of putting myself in your shoes. I may not be correct by this, by assuming this, but I would imagine that when they put let's say a car dealership puts a coupon in the paper, and first 50 people this or whatever, they can kind of measure it immediately, where the online and digital marketing may not be something that translates well to them in the immediate, or even in longer. So did you have a hard time, convincing them that what they were doing was working?
Yeah. So then at that point, like whenever I got a customer or client, in that case, attribution and tracking for all those successive leads was very hard. And so for me, I could not charge performance based, even though performance based is like it's pretty standard in the industry itself. I just knew that first off, I'm dealing with sharks, which is the car dealership industry, especially for the independent ones. Sure. And they were sometimes bad on payments, and also too, like they weren't like showing me all the metrics that I needed to do, because obviously if you make them a ton of money, they don't want to pay a lot more money, right? Sure. And the issues with that whole a lot of whether it be automotive or like the old school industries is the tracking for like online to offline sales was hard, and the website and technology behind that wasn't good at attributing that an online lead would translate to the sales happening on the floor. or if it was inspired or influenced by that. And that became a whole issue in itself, where even like the car dealership or the real estate agents or brokerages websites were just terrible, or they didn't have the proper metrics in place to be able to track that. It is possible to get pretty clean in tracking that, in terms of being able to see if an online lead turns into a offline sale, but the technology in place during those times especially just wasn't there, or the clients themselves didn't want to pay for that cost, and the technology vendors at that point were just slow moving, and they didn't care to innovate or build those tools to attribute that for the sales. And so that became a huge kind of issue where either the client side didn't want to move, or the vendors were just comfortable, or they're old school themselves too, which I found that they didn't want to kind of innovate.
So fast forward to today, what kind of clients are you taking on today, and what are your challenges and successes there?
Yeah. So, in the past few years, I initially started out when I moved down to Los Angeles from Seattle. I identified that the LA startup scene and tech scene was exploding. And so, I went for like the low-hanging fruit. I started targeting and helping startups, especially young early stage startups, with their growth, right? I think a lot of companies in that stage, they're trying to get their next round of funding, their seed funding, Series A, or they're just trying to get more traction. Growth is an important component to that. But as we see within like the past year or two, funding kind of has dried up, and also too, I think in the past few years we've seen kind of a, not like the same a startup bubble, but I wouldn't say it's like the same as it was previously. But there was a lot of ideas that just didn't have a lot of sense or business sense that got funded, and they didn't get their next round of funding just because it just, the models didn't work out. And so initially I started out working with startups just because that's an easy replenishing market. But I noticed that a lot of my customers were dying. And I'm like, okay, well, if I can expect churn, I can continue working with this segment of market. But then I just started looking a little bit more upstream. But then again, I started diverging more back into the markets that are existing, whether brick and mortar, or they have an e-commerce business or an actual revenue generating model, and started working with businesses like my biggest client right now is a granite and quartz countertop company.
Interesting.
Which is not even a startup in a sense, right? But they don't have any digital, and now they all their competitors are taking over the whole industry. And when you go to like Home Depot, or whenever you think about building a house, their brand comes up. And so that was very interesting for me to take on that type of project to help them with the whole digital. And once I get into that, and you help them with marketing, then you'll start seeing these kind of companies start piling on all their different ideas, like, oh, can you build this website? Can you build an app? And all that stuff. You just become like their whole digital manager of their all digital assets, and that just opens up the projects and the pipeline a little bit more.
So when you take on a client like the granite countertop thing, I mean, I imagine you do some sort of an online audit of everything they've got, maybe things that have been said about them. But I mean, how do you really like just roll up your sleeves and dig right in? I mean, where do you start? Yeah,
so where we start is we go and just take a look, through the years that I've been running a lot of growth for a lot of companies. There's like pretty much like a checklist that we go down the line, and just trying to go and understand what is existing right now. Like, what are the outbound channels people are running their marketing? What does the inbound look like? Are they utilizing email marketing? Are they running any ads? How's the whole landing page and funnels look like? So we always focus on the foundations first. The outbound channels, like, we'll identify them, but outbound channels come and go, and they're always going to exist they're always going to exist there. What we like to go first in terms of like the checkoff list is understanding like the website to the whole the email flow, the whole system in place first. And usually, even existing businesses that are generating, even a million plus run rate, they still don't have everything figured out, and that just becomes easy to come in and rebuild that or fulfill those gaps within those businesses. And so usually what we do is we sit down with the customer and just go and have like a full feel and architecting the whole kind of skeleton and flow of their whole marketing funnel. And what you realize is that most people don't just sit down and plan and map that out. They're just literally buying and slapping things together and trying to get things launched. And it makes sense because a lot of these founders and entrepreneurs or businesses, they just grew fast, or they're trying to grow fast, and they're trying to run their business, and still marketing and distribution and growth is something they understand that they need, but they just haven't sat down and really focused on that.
Well, and I think a lot of people that are starting up, they don't have the background to even know to check all these boxes. They just kind of wing it, and they do what they think they need to do, and they do some research and stuff, but I mean, it's impossible to know everything.
And I think the issue though is that also too, like everybody is trying to learn like ad hoc, and they're I always like to say like there's like the BuzzFeed of business and marketing articles out there, right? Like there's like top 10 ways to grow your business, and they'll just like identify a lot of different channels. I think the biggest mistake, especially for entrepreneurs and founders, is that they're just like sitting down and reading all these different articles, but they don't clearly identify the channels that work for them, or they don't go down the line and experiment one channel at a time and find out what channels work for them. They're just sitting down and reading all these different articles, reading all these different platforms, and then just like halfway, half measure, trying these different channels out and just jumping around. And whether if you're going out and trying to learn how to build your marketing plan and funnel, first you identify the channels, then you find the growth hacks, tools, and experts within that channel itself to explode that channel. So you don't go out and go on like growthhackers.com or like inbound.org or all these like Facebook groups and just go and read all these different articles. You're going to constantly just read articles and just have a lot of kind of noise in terms of education. You first should just identify channel. Like, I want to grow on Snapchat for my business or Instagram. Then you find the tools for Instagram growth or the experts, and then go specific to that channel.
So how are people? First of all, I imagine. I mean, we even already covered it. In just about every channel, there's going to be people that are experts, right? But not all of them are. So for somebody who might be listening to this podcast who's wanting to get started and let's say they want to figure out email marketing funnel. I mean, how would they go about finding somebody that truly is worth hiring?
Yeah. So, I mean, there's always hit or misses in terms of like the marketing in the marketing world. It's the same way for me as I treat even when I go out and hire developers, right? Everybody says they're a great developer. Everybody says they're a great marketer. First, you want to go and identify, has this person have any case studies? Or track record. That's usually a really good sign. If they do, they should obviously have materials or like the kind of case study document or some sort of proof in doing so. And if you're going out and hire the marketers, try to do some diligence in the sense that maybe try to contact the case studies or the actual businesses that have utilized that said service or marketer or agency for that work, right? Just kind of proof is in the pudding for that, and then after that too, I've seen as a mistake where marketers or agencies sometimes just don't really like showcase all the different parts of what they've done, and so because of that, it's definitely a a test that you should deploy for your any marketing hire or agency hire, whether it be in-house or in-house or outbound. Start with a small project. When I go out and hire a developer or other marketers, I give them a small project, see how they perform on that, and then scale up my budget and campaign with them. Obviously, the test, what you should do is identify something that will net a result as early as possible. Don't hand a long-term project with a short-term look on it. Definitely find something that can get traction and have that marketer or agency prove themselves out to be able to run that growth and then run full force.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. Good
Yeah,
advice.
But there's sometimes, there's some cases where if you're trying to build like infrastructure, or you're just trying to build like the whole marketing architecture, that's not as much performance based. That's more of like deliverable based, where you want that person to write the emails, you want them to create the landing pages, create the website, the app, or install the analytics. And so at that point, that's where you just have to work with that agency and make sure that you really put that game plan together. One last mistake that I've seen done where somebody will say, "Oh, I work with a marketer," and they give full reins to that marketer, but that marketer didn't provide a deliverable roadmap or schedule, and so because of that, you're at the mercy of their time, and you don't know what's getting done. And I think that's like a big communication issue where a lot of agencies or marketers or consultants either get fired or there's just or they just have miscommunication or understanding on the founder or business side of what actually has been done. And so getting that upfront before any project starts or like doing regular checkups beforehand, like monthly, like this is what's going to happen for this month, and then do regular checkups within every week or bi-weekly, however you want to set that up, and then do a summary right at the very end so that you're kind of doing like sprint marketing, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Very interesting and great advice. Hey, I wanted to, I've discovered you actually on Snapchat. Okay. You use Snapchat a lot. And I think your name on Snapchat is Hackapreneur Justin or J.
Hackapreneur.
Yeah. Tell me about, first of all, tell me about Hackapreneur and about how you got started on Snapchat.
Yeah. So for me, we've been running marketing for all these years, and I've just been, focusing heads down, learning more about the business, and learning more about marketing in general and running my own businesses. And as I've been sitting on the sidelines, I started noticing these other marketers, for the past 8+ years that I've been heavily going into growth hacking and marketing. They're creating content and building their name up and kind of growing in that whole as a marketing thought leader. But the issues that I had sometimes is that, I think what we talked about previously is that marketers are great at marketing themselves too, right? And so a lot of that is definitely a lot of growth hacks and hype behind that. And me as a marketer, I can see through a lot of what's going out in the industry itself. And I just started seeing some marketers or experts not who aren't as knowledgeable in the space, but have a big name and building that up. And there's no problem in doing that at all, But for me, when I started building my own personal brand, like an important quote came out. It's like, hustle beats talent when talent does the hustle. It doesn't matter how great of a marketer I am. If I'm not hustling out there, putting my name out there, I have no say against all these other marketers that are building their name up, even though they might not have the talent. They're hustling, right?
Sure.
But if I know that I have the talent, which I've been building up for all these years, putting my heads down and actually hustle, then I can actually make my name out there and prove myself against all these other kind of marketing influencers and people out there. And what I didn't like in the whole term, in the whole kind of like marketing influencers or just like marketers industry itself, is that people just started putting out really, I wouldn't say bad content, but just very surface level content or just regurgitating, and they're just getting away with it, which is cool. because again, most entrepreneurs and founders don't really know much about marketing, but they're getting away with not providing real insights and actual depth in their content. And so because I was able to even identify that space in the market itself, then I just saw that as an opportunity to kind of come out and provide, content that is much more, that goes a little bit deeper than just surface level. Go instead of the what, talk about the how and why we're running these marketing campaigns, these growth hacks, and kind of give people that type of view. And that's where I found a lot of traction building out my own personal brand. Now, in terms of like Snapchat, I just chose Snapchat out of the blue just because I knew out of every single platform out there, Snapchat was and still is the hardest platform to grow. And so I made a long-term bet, especially thanks to like Gary Vaynerchuk, who popularized Snapchat, especially for business. I just knew though that compared to every other platform out there, Snapchat is the hardest platform to grow because you have to create content every single day. You have to show you're the real you. There's not a lot of editing that can be done, unlike YouTube or these other platforms. And so because of that, again, based on my hypothesis where these other marketers are kind of just hitting surface level, or they're not providing that depth, or they're doing a lot of heavy editing and pre-research on the topics they talk about, that they wouldn't be able to, I made that hedge where those guys weren't able to get on Snapchat as much because they are not, they're making stuff up compared to just documenting and actually knowing subject matter expertise on the subject itself. And so because of that, I saw even an opportunity within the Snapchat space itself to really push myself as a brand and be that voice in that category and play long-term game and build myself out within that space. And so because of that, I started out just snapping every single day. And whether it was Snapchat itself or another platform like Instagram or whatever, it didn't really matter to me what the platform was. All I knew was that I wanted to get to personal branding and brand marketing. And then I looked at Snapchat as a channel, but then I looked at the skill set that I was learning because I was doing Snapchat, where I was learning how to create video content, vlogging style, documenting everything. And if I didn't get traction on Snapchat, that was okay, because then now Instagram stories came out. I had the practice and the ability to talk better now, to create content, video content daily, and then that will be transferable to YouTube, Facebook video, and then as I continue to talk better and more fluidly, which I was a bad speaker before I got into my personal brand, it will help me build myself up for live streaming. And so I was focused more so on the skill set, not the platform, and then I made that bet on Snapchat and then kept growing from there. And so Snapchat was a start, and then now I'm branching myself out into all the different platforms.
Well, I don't consume a lot on Snapchat. I broadcast a lot more than I consume, but I mean, I think when I watch your channel, every 10 seconds is like value galore. I mean, it's just incredible the amount of value that you get into every 10 seconds. And it's no nonsense pretty much from beginning to end. It's beautiful how you do that.
Thanks. Appreciate it. Yeah. So, for anybody is starting out, whether it be Snapchat or just like they haven't made the plunge yet to creating content or their own personal brand, it used to take me 3 hours to do like a 5 to 10 minute segment on Snapchat. A lot of reasons behind that. First, I'm more like I'm more like an introvert. So talking and speaking wasn't my forte. I wasn't able to speak loud, clear, and more as fluid. And so that's something that I had to train and work on, but I just kept pushing through that. And also, too, when I started doing the initial snaps, the Snapchats, I didn't know how to deal with the short 10-second medium. I was getting myself cut off, and that helped me kind of like think about ways to really condense the topics, and it just helped me improve and understand the topics better themselves as I continue to talk and teach about it, right? Because now what I have to do first is I have to take a specific subject, whether it be sales, marketing, growth hacking, Instagram, whatever. Then I have to think of the whole concept from finish to end, what I want to open up with, the meat of the content and the ending. And then I have to put it in order to really describe the progression of that channel or that growth hack. And then I have to get that within those 10 seconds each single time in the right transition and stages. And so because I'm doing that mentally and planning that out, I am essentially breaking down topics step by step, and it's helping me become better as a marketer itself because I'm becoming more process driven as I go through and build these like workflows and teachings to really understand and master the topics.
Now, when you work, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No. That's pretty much what I was saying.
I was just going to say, when you work with these companies, with your agency, do you get them into Snapchat? Is that something you push?
No. The thing about Snapchat is that it doesn't work for every single business. And, if it's like a consumer brand, like Snapchat is a good channel, but not every single business should be on Snapchat. I think right now for like a lot of businesses out there, unless they are super like consumer friendly brand or they're hitting like the young demographic, I think Snapchat is cool, but there's other channels that can get faster traction for the amount of effort that you do on Snapchat itself. I love Snapchat, but it definitely is a more long-term play channel because you're building up the brand, you're building up a following, you're building up a user base, and it requires a lot of work because you have to constantly create content every single day since it disappears and phases out. But Snapchat isn't like the first channel I recommend to everybody to do because it's definitely higher maintenance in terms of the channel itself. And the channels I always like to recommend to the clients that I work with is something that requires minimal effort but maximum sure. Output, at least to start. And Snapchat isn't one to do that, and it's something to build over time. I would recommend it to like the founders and the marketers to build casually, and there's tactics to do so, but it's not like a primary channel of growth that I recommend for my initial clients to do.
Well, I'll tell you, I do agree with you that, you started on Snapchat. I as well got into video on Snapchat, and I saw it as a place where I could make mistakes and then I have to fit within certain confines of the time. And you've got to really condense your message. And I think it's a great place to train yourself for other venues, quite honestly. Even if you're not going to hang in there for the long term, it's a great place to kind of just, put your foot in the water and cut your teeth a little bit.
Yeah, and I agree with that 100%. Because the thing that if you really look at Snapchat as a platform itself, for those that don't that are still understanding or trying to figure out Snapchat, what makes Snapchat so special is that to me it is one of the most like pure social networks in the sense that you don't know how many followers somebody has. You can see points, but even then points don't really reveal anything. You don't know how much. And it's a more like one-to-one connection instead of like a public wall. And people are much more authentic and raw with the content that they push out. And so it's more authentic than almost any other platform that exists out there because of the lack of followers, the lack of a feed or, a public wall. And in terms of growth, there's no way to grow it except through word of mouth and organically. And so because of that, like it's to me, it's like the most organic social network or platform out there. And if you really start to play around and learn that basic fundamentals, then any other social network will become a much more breeze or cake to walk through compared to Snapchat.
Sure. Now, you recently had a collaboration with the Wall Street Journal concerning Snapchat. What was that about?
Yeah, so Wall Street Journal, obviously, they're much more traditional, and they still heavily print. And they still stick by that to this day. But now they realize that they need to start getting into the younger generation. They need to get into other mediums. And so Wall Street Journal, they obviously purchased. I'm not sure if I don't think they purchased. I think they became a partner with Snapchat to have a Discover channel, which is a dedicated channel on the Snapchat platform to push content. And so for them, they had this big conference called Wall Street Journal Live, WSJD Live. And typically at this event, they have a lot of executives from all over, CEOs, CMOs, etc., CTOs, from all these, Fortune, even up to like Fortune 100 plus companies come by, some really heavy hitters. But that was only good for really big or like old school businesses. For like the young entrepreneurs, the tech space, they just didn't have the audience. And so they saw me speak and also push a lot of like marketing entrepreneurship related content on my own Snapchat channel. And they reached out for me to kind of cover the event, but also to help them reach that other audience that they're not reaching at all, which is the entrepreneurs that are not the big companies, or they just don't know that the WSJD Live exists. And so that just became a huge opportunity, again, whether it be like looking at old school businesses or just traditional media or big publications or whatnot, is that they are now understanding that they need to be in the forefront of the latest trending and disrupting channels, or else they're going to be archaic and die like the old companies that all have fizzled out. And so because of that, you have this whole opportunity where people are becoming much more open to experimentation and trying new platforms out. And that's in this case where the Wall Street Journal wanted to experiment and get more people to kind of help them reach new demographics and segments.
Sweet. And did they approach you, or did you approach them?
They approached me, and the way that happened was they saw me spoke at another like Snapchat related panel, and from there they just started seeing the topics that I talked about, and it was just somebody on the team that found me, and they saw the content that I was pushing out, and then that's where they decided to reach out directly to me.
That's fantastic. Hey, I've got one last thing I wanted to talk to you about, and I wish I would have known that you were there because I would have rather have hung out with you than at the part of the line that I was in. But we were both at the Venice Beach Snapbot drop, the very first. I think you were there the first day, right?
Yeah, the Snapchat spectacles.
And I saw a picture where you actually got to buy some. I didn't get to buy any.
Oh, sorry about that.
Well, I'm down in Orange County, so I found out about it. Joel Com posted it on Facebook at some point in the morning, and I think I noticed it around 10:30. And it took me about an hour to kind of tidy up my day and change my plans dramatically to run up there. So I got up there at about 12:30, which was way too late.
Yeah, it was crazy.
Yeah, well, and for the first drop, I didn't know what I was getting into. I mean, I didn't know if it was going to go all day. Yeah, I had no idea. So, tell me a little bit about your experience, and did you buy 2 pair, and how have you enjoyed your spectacles?
Yeah. So what happened was I was sleeping, and my dog woke me up at like 6 a.m. I was a little upset about it, but then he's like, oh, he needs to use the restroom. So I brought him out, went walking, and then I just like pulled up my phone, just checked the morning trending news. And then I saw on Facebook, TechCrunch posted, oh, Snapchat Spectacles is out right now in Venice Beach. And then at that moment, I was tired. I instantly just woke up. I knew, like, okay, I need to go and get these spectacles right now. And I know that it's going to be a crazy hype and line. And so at that point, like, I just instantly woke up, got into my car, and it took me an hour to get through traffic. Traffic's terrible at that time. And I still made it around like 7:30 a.m. And there was I started a pretty big line. And the line wasn't moving. I was like, what's going on? Am I too late? Nobody knew what was happening. And at that point, like the machine wasn't like distributing any spectacles. And so what happened, they pulled up a van, they put this tent over it, and refilled it. And at that point, the line started moving. And so it was crazy because what happened after that, people in the front of the line were starting to buy like a lot of pairs, and people, and every time you buy a spectacle, it takes a few minutes because it has a nice animation of the eye, the big eye that it has. Rainbows come out, makes a lot of noises. and people were just cutting in line and buying a lot of pairs because they wanted to resell it on eBay, which a lot of people immediately did and sold it for thousands and thousands of dollars. But I was fortunate enough to get in line and get two pairs. I got them both, one black and one turquoise, and I personally have loved the pair, and I've used it every few days depending on the types of snaps. To me, the spectacles is a really fun tool and toy to use. There's definitely pros and cons to the Snapchat spectacles, but overall, I'm very satisfied with the first version that Snapchat put out with the spectacles.
Yeah, I think they've hit a home run with everything about it. I mean, before they came out, I kind of looked at the spectacles negatively. I kind of thought, Google Glass and, what could this possibly be like? But their marketing has been brilliant in rolling these things out. And I got a pair as well, although I got a pair from the Big Sur drop. I knew somebody that lived nearby.
Wow, I was like, look, that one was also challenging too, because that was like deep.
Well, and I still had to pay a premium because my friend it's a friend of mine, but he's a flipper. I mean, he's an Amazon guy and he's a flipper. And so, he could sell them on Amazon or eBay for $1,000, or he could sell them to me for $500. And you know what? I have to admit, that's what I paid. I hate to admit that after standing in line for $139, but you know what? I don't regret it at all. Because I've had so much fun with them, and people watching my content really seem to enjoy having something fresh and something different and something rare, because quite honestly, I mean, do you see many people using them yet?
No.
Yeah.
No. It's still super rare to have.
Yeah. I mean, if you go on Twitter, you can find lots of clips and things, but like in the content that I watch, I just don't see anybody using them yet. And I watch some pretty big people, and it's kind of surprised me that actually some people that are pretty big Snapchat, for lack of a better word, gurus, haven't had them, yet. So
yeah. And Snapchat didn't really distribute it to like any influencer at all or anything like that. They just had it like a full like free for all, and they didn't like have any preferential treatment to like the big Snapchat influencers or not. Like even the Snapchat influencers or any big name had to either buy a pair at a really high price, or which I know a lot of them paid for, or they lined up.
Yeah. Well, listen, Justin, I really appreciate, and I'm forever grateful that you I know you've been so busy lately, and for taking the time out to be on my podcast. I'd like
no problem at all.
Yeah, I'd like for you to tell the crowd where they can find you and where you like to communicate with people if they like to reach out to you.
Yeah. So there's a few ways to connect with me. I'm, my Snapchat, my Instagram, my Twitter, all over. It's Hackapreneur, which is HACKAPRENEUR. And the reason I came up with that name is just talking about hacking entrepreneurship, right? As an entrepreneur and founder of previous startups in the past, I realized that you had to put on different hats. And so because of that, I've jumped through a lot of different hoops: leadership, business development, marketing, sales, etc. And I'd like to talk about a lot of those different topics and cover off kind of the thought process and approaches the way that I've been able to learn and go through those topics fast. And so that's a great way to, if you want to consume my content. I'm heavily on Instagram and Snapchat. I'm still building up my YouTube and live streaming and other types of content later, but Snapchat and Instagram is where you can find me. Or you can just reach out directly at justin@growth.ly. I'm always down to chat about entrepreneurship, growth, etc. You can always reach out directly. Email. I respond to every snap. I respond to every email as best as I can. And so you can always reach me there.
And I'll put a lot of your contact information in the show notes so people can find you there.
Even
Again,
Facebook.
Yeah. Hey, again, Justin, thank you so much. Good luck with what you're doing. I hope to have you as a guest in the future. And with that, folks, please rate, review, and subscribe. And until next time, stay productive, my friends.
Thanks.
Justin, again, thank you so much for participating in this.